Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving, literature loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be talking with author Glenn Herdling. And Glenn, I'm already feeling the Spider-Man love right now, from the
You
shirt.
see
Love
that?
that. I
Yes.
do. That's cool.
That was from the Spider-Man annual where he got married to Mary Jane, and we came up with the Spider-Man heart, and we had pins made for that and everything. But figured this month is always a good time to wear it since it's Valentine's month. So
That's right. That's right. We're headed toward the end of Valentine's month, but it is still the month of love. And I thought that was the logo from the Peter marrying Mary Jane
yeah, mhm,
book. So awesome.
yeah.
Um,
There were two covers done. There was the Spider-Man and Mary Jane cover, and then that all the villains and the heroes in the background, and then had Peter and Mary Jane, and they had just their cast behind them. So it was
yes.
fun.
One of those big moments in the Spider-Man story for sure.
That was actually when I first, it was actually one of the first books I worked on. I came to the Spider-Man office and it was actually one of the very first issues. My name was in, and I got to be the assistant editor. I was Jim Salicrupe's assistant editor on those. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
made a little bit of history.
That's right. That's right. Well, I usually mention titles, but we're already sort of digging through that a little bit. You've worked on Spider-Man, Wolverine, What If. You did a really interesting crossover book that I love, the Rune and Silver Surfer.
Yeah,
You were on that book as well as, is it Namor? Is that the way
yep,
we say it? Yeah,
yep. Namor the Submariner. Yes,
that's right. That's right.
yeah. And
Eh,
Namor, I did that for 2 years with Jeff Isherwood, and it's actually funny. I'm collecting all of my comic books into volumes now, into like these thick binders, and they're
mm,
these white binders, really thick, and they just look with all this awesome stuff going on in between the covers, and there was nothing on the outside saying how awesome what's in there. So I've had Jeff Isherwood. He's going to be doing me a mural for both the covers for the for these volumes, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he puts together for me.
love it. Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool. And getting to celebrate the goodies inside is always a good thing.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured
Um,
something they can leave out at my funeral.
there you go. There you go. I mean, I guess it's never too early to make plans, but sure, sure. We've gone from weddings to funerals, and it's not even been but the first few minutes. We're going to cover a lot. Um,
Well, Jason, I turned 60 in a couple of months, so yes, I'm having.
well, well, may the creating continue. I usually say that toward the end, but may there be many years of creating. Now, you've also written in prose, and you and I have some common interests in like young adult literature, mythology. You've written on the subject of mythology, and you have the Piper Houdini series
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, I did some stuff for a publishing company where I did Jason. I did Jason and the Golden Fleece as a comic
mhm.
book form, and I also did Anansi, the African spider god, which is kind of fun. I was like looking at that, I was like, "Ooh, this would have made a great character in Spider-Man."
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I usually ask like an origin question of what
Hmm.
gets people attracted to the written word. I mentioned I'm an English teacher and literacy person.
Hmm.
So curious about what connected you with writing and particularly with comics, but we can talk across the board on that.
I think the comics in general. I mean, I started reading when I was like third grade. My father brought home a book for me, and he said, "You're going to read this." I was like,
You don't have a
"Okay."
choice.
And it was Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators. It was kind of like a Hardy Boys type thing, but it was actually these. I always call it like the Marvel version of the Hardy Boys. It was, I was thinking like DC was more, these iconic characters, and so the Hardy Boys were those iconic characters, and the Three Investigators are like these three guys. One was a little overweight, one was had a bad leg, and the other one was the athletic one and everything. But and they lived in a junkyard, and I just thought this was great, and I actually then read the entire series, and so that's when I really started getting into the reading of novel things. But before that, I was actually reading comic books. I had my This was my first Hulk comic book. It's the first comic book actually I ever read. I was down at the shore at the Long Beach Island, and it was a rainy week. And as a kid, there's nothing worse than being at the beach during a rainy week. And so my mother went out, And she came home and she bought me. She says, "Here, read this. This will, keep you busy." And it was a Hulk and Submariner comic, believe it or not, of all things. It was a reprint of Tales to Astonish, called Marvel Superheroes. And in it, the two characters, one of the characters was actually looking for the other one, but they never actually met. There was two stories in it, and at the end the Hulk goes, "Now I'm free, but free to do what?" I was like, "Oh, I want to know, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do?" So it got me hooked on comics, and I didn't even realize that was a reprint at the time. I thought that was the ongoing series. I learned, later on from my good friend Mike Lackey, that it was, it was not a reprint. I mean, that was a reprint. And there was an ongoing series going on, and so that got me into collecting monthly on a monthly basis. And I found this friend that I can actually talk comics with, my friend Mike. And so, years later, I actually got when I got a job at Marvel, I got Mike to be in at Marvel as well. So that was a great time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as somebody that's created sort of across forms, what's that like to kind of go from comics to prose, and
Yeah,
particularly
I'd
thinking about
always
like,
wanted to see if I could write a novel. It's interesting. The comic book writing process is, you pretty much you write the action. All you need is just enough there for the artist to get the gist of what it is that you need for them to,
Mhm,
especially in the Marvel method, right? The Marvel method is it's a two-stage writing process, and you write the action for the artist to then draw, and then it comes back to the writer, and the writer then does the scripting, what they call the scripting, which is the dialogue. And then we do also do balloon placements for the characters. The character should be speaking here, and we do the placements, and the letter can look at the balloon placement and then takes the script, and they letter what you have written as the writer.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but my plots always got pretty very heavy-handed. I was always, trying to be very prosaic in my descriptions of things or everything. And the artist's like, "Glenn, you don't really need to say this much. All you need to say is this much." And so I think I always had that, that author in me. That author wanted to get out and break out and do the novel. And I just wanted to just do it to see if I could do it. And Piper was very interesting because Piper has a history of where I actually submitted it as a Marvel comic,
uh,
but it was uh, a Doctor for Doctor Strange. And what I wanted to do was give Doctor Strange a nephew, because I thought it would be great to have this kid running around in Doctor Strange's, Sanctum Sanctorum, getting into all sorts of mischief and everything. I just thought it'd be fantastic. And so
uh-huh.
I, pitched it at the time to editor in chief Joe Quesada. And Joe was just like, "Glenn, love it, but we are doing something, completely different with Doc right now, so we really can't use it." And I was like, why am I giving all my best ideas to Marvel?
Mhm,
I said,
mhm,
why don't I see if I can do this myself? I said, but self-publishing comics, I was like, I don't know if I wanted to get into that route. I said, I want to see if I can do this as a novel. But then what should I do with the character? How would I do? Who would become that iconic, um, patriarchal figure that Doctor Strange would have been? So I said, when you think of magicians in the real world, who do you think of? The first person that comes to mind is Houdini, right?
mhm, mhm,
So I was like, all right. Now I was like, that means I have to set it in the 20s. Now I have to research. My knowledge of the 20s at the time was not that much. I had actually read a little bit of Houdini, and so I knew a lot about what was going on. But so then I, but started buying these books about it, started reading these massive tomes. But not only that, I read the entire New York Times, the New York Times front pages for the year in the 1920s and 1926 that the novel takes place. So if it says in the book on a particular day that it was raining, it really was raining on that particular day
Oh,
in
wow.
history. Yeah.
Love that attention to detail.
Well, I did that with Namor too. Right? When I got on Namor, I was like, because one of the things at Marvel we had these things called no prizes. I don't know. Are you familiar with no prizes, Jason?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
So what it is for your listeners here is no prize is if you catch something wrong that Marvel did, and either one of the writers, the artists, or the editors they didn't catch, and you find something wrong, you could send in for your Mighty Marvel No Prize. And basically, what it was an envelope that you get in the mail that had the Hulk on it. It says, "Enclose your Mighty Marvel No Prize." And you open it up, and there's nothing inside. And that's your no prize. But you get that validation that yeah, you caught them. Well, I never wanted anyone when I was on Namor to say that could never happen underwater. You can't do this underwater. You can't do that underwater. So I started like studying about the oceanography and things like that about what happens with pressure. And I actually wanted to get certified as a scuba diver at the
Mhm.
time. I wasn't able to. I did it not so long ago. I actually did it about 10 years ago. I got certified finally, but never did it during my Namor run. But I just wanted just to know that experience and just, what is it about pressure and what is it about what are things that can be done? And one of the things I never understood about Namor was why was everyone, always walking on the sea floor? Everyone who was an Atlantean would be able to fly. Why wouldn't you
Mhm.
fly,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that we had Jeff do when he was doing these scenes in Atlantis and everything. It wasn't just people standing on the ocean floor. It was people that are actually floating around and things like that. And but we got into a lot of details and things that I just read about that. And the research actually drives the story in many parts. It's like so there were things I'd be reading about during my research during Namor. It's like, oh, that would be interesting if I did that or I did something like this. And the same thing happened with Piper when I, started reading about what was going on in history at the time. It's like, ooh, I could use that scene in here. And there are actually scenes in the book that really happened. I,
Mhm.
took some liberties with it, but for the most part, it happened at that time, and there were scenes that were taken directly from history. There was time where there was a big thunder shower on Valentine's Day, and the movie theater went black in Brooklyn in Coney Island, and the movie just lost power, and everyone's like freaking out, and I don't know what movie they were watching there, but so I used that in the book, and it actually happened on that particular day, and it was a pivotal scene that I got to use, and they were watching Nosferatu. I put the movie they were watching was Nosferatu. So.
Love it, love it. What a great way to include visual Easter eggs and some of those historical Easter eggs too. Love that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jeff Isherwood, and you mentioned working on Spider-Man
Mhm.
and Namor. Any other particular experiences or collaborations that, to borrow an Atlantean phrase here, that bubble up to the surface as you look back over your career?
I proposed to my wife in What If?
Yes, great, great. Yeah, I was going to mention you did some really cool issues of What If, including Wolverine and Conan. But please tell
Conan,
us
yeah.
about the proposal.
So that was actually so my wife was introduced to me. Like I met Scott McDaniel, artist Scott McDaniel,
Hmm.
at college. We both went to Bucknell University together, and he was on my freshman hall, and we became close buds. Not only did we work out together, but we actually went every Saturday to the local comic shop and bought our comic books, and then we'd sit in Scott's room and we'd read them and just kind of talk about them and everything. But Scott was a great artist, and we did the school paper cartoon as well at the time. So, we got into a lot of trouble for some of those, but that's a story for another time. Um, but yeah, and so I met Scott there. And then when I graduated, I got a job at Marvel, and Scott was an engineer. Scott was working for, I think, a Kiefert missile guidance system. He had been an electrical engineering major, I think. And so, but he had this talent, and and he kept drawing when he come home, and we keep putting these stories together and things, and so I said, Scott, I'm going to get you in there. I'm going to get you in there. I'm going to get you in there. And one of the very first things that Scott worked on was the proposal I did in What If, from it,
Hmm.
because I think it was Scott's girlfriend at the time, but they got married and they're still married to this day. Is his girlfriend introduced me to the person that I proposed to. So that was Laura. So I thought it was only fitting that Scott should draw the issue, and I still have the original art of that splash page of when I proposed to her.
Love it, love it, love it. Comics just bring people together. I love
That's right. Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Now I mentioned I'm a teacher, and I'm curious about what it's been like for you to go from writer, creator, and now sort of uh, building into some of the next generation of writers and creators.
Well, so it's interesting. I'm also a in the teaching space. I'm a adjunct professor at Montclair State University, but I teach business communication. So they're actually tapping into what I've been doing for the latter part of my career rather than the earlier part of my career. Would I love to teach creative writing? Yes, I would love to teach creative writing, but right now, I'm dealing with business communications, and I
Hmm.
know a lot in that area too. And just trying to teach students how to write when you're writing in a business setting, what it is you should say, how you should sound, what things you can say to people that work for you, and then people who are your clients, and people who are your or prospects and things like that. So it's different tone for each, and doing like audience analysis. But whereas when you're creative writing, you're writing for yourself, right? And that's the
Hmm.
thing
Hmm.
about creative writing. So it's a huge different process. You have to think about others when you're writing in business, but when you're writing creative writing, I mean, yes, you want to think about your audience. Would my audience, I definitely, there was a lot of things I could have written about in my first novel, but I thought, at the time Harry Potter was very successful. I said, let me just dust off this, it was called Duncan Strange. That was the thing I did for Marvel. I said, let me dust off this Duncan Strange and see if I can do it, as prose for and tap into that Harry Potter audience. So I did. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, very cool. So I think I have one more official question, and then we can
Okay.
hit anything that we've missed. I always like to ask about sort of what has your creative attention at the moment. That could be any range of things,
Hmm.
because getting to work with young people at the college level or at any age is always creative in its
Hmm.
own right. And curious about where people can go to learn a little bit more.
Well, I'm actually completely did a right turn from where I've been working. I started working in, the creative field at Marvel. Then I started working in healthcare communications. Now I'm in the app business. I've
Mhm, mhm.
created my own app, Jason.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, it's called Hadom, HADOM, stands for Have a Drink on Me. So if Jason, you go into a bar and they have the software all lined up on their POS system and everything, you would get a notification saying you've just walked into a Haddam bar. Would you
Mhm.
like to let your friends know so they can either A, join you, or B, buy you a drink?
Nice.
So yeah. So and where are you, Jason? You're located where?
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina. So I'm not going to be able to join you in North Carolina. I'm in here in New Jersey. So, but I'd get a notification on my phone. I said, oh, Jason just walked into a Haddam bar. Would you like to buy him a drink? I said, yeah, I'd like to, thank Jason for that cool podcast he put me on. I'm going to,
Ah,
see if you'd like a drink. So, boom, you get a notification. Glenn would like to buy you a drink. Would you like to accept? Oh, that's really nice of Glenn. I'm going to accept the drink. And, then it happens between me and the bar's POS system. So, that was that's where my creativity is actually landing right now.
I love that. And once more, you have a talent for bringing people together. So that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
exactly. It's a very social. It's a social app, and that's one thing I really it was. I actually uh found this to be well how it all happened. I was skiing with my two sons back in 2019 pre-COVID, and I fell and I went down hard. I
Mhm,
hit my
mhm.
shoulder, and I knew something was wrong as soon as I got up. The shoulder went. I went ah, and I was like, all right, that's definitely dislocated. I did the Martin Riggs thing from Lethal Weapon. I found a soft patch of snow and I
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
rammed it back in and jammed back in again. That was painful too. And my son's like, Dad, you got to go to first aid. I said, right, yeah, we'll get you a stretcher. I said, no stretcher. My legs are fine. So I skied down, and we had all our equipment at the bar. So I said, let me just get my coat off there and everything. So I pulled the coat off. The thing popped out again. I screamed
Ah,
bloody murder. My oldest son said, Dad, get to the first aid now. So we brought me down there. And then they suggested I go to the local hospital. I said, we was in this rinky dink Catskills town. I was like, yeah, I brought my sons here. I would rather birthday ski the rest of the day. I'm going to be that poor soul at the bar that I always wanted to be.
Hmm.
And with the injury and people buying me drinks and having sympathy for me, so I was there, and I sent that out on social media, sent it to hey, what would you do this, and I had this pathetic picture of myself in this sling they gave me that was made from a floral pillowcase that they tore up and everything. So and I said, what would you do? Would you go to the bar? Or would you go to the hospital? Of course, 90% of my friends said, oh yeah, I'd definitely be at the bar with you, right? And one of my friends, he reached out and he said, oh, I'm having a drink for you. And I was about to write him back. I said, well, why aren't you sending me a drink? I
Uh-huh.
was like,
Uh-huh.
wait a minute, does that technology exist? So wait, let me see. And so now I'm searching my phone. That's got to exist, right? It's just too basic an idea for someone not to have come up with this already. So I'm looking, I said, nothing like this exists. So I had just had a windfall, and here's where this all ties into comics.
Hmm.
Um, Todd McFarlane had given me, well, I had helped Todd McFarlane write the first 5 issues of his adjectiveless Spider-Man.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
Todd first came on the Spider, he was on Amazing Spider-Man for a while, and then Jim Salicrup and I said, "Hey, we're going to give you your own book that you can write." And Todd was like all ecstatic, but then he called me in fear one day. He said, "Hey, Glembo, Glembo, but Glembo, I don't know what to write. I'm like stuck here, and I got writer block. I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Well, I had this story, Todd, that I was kind of been pitching around for a while. I actually submitted it. It was going to be like, a backup story somewhere. But if you want to run with it, go ahead." And it was, a follow up to the whole Craven saga. Craven had had a girlfriend. Very few people knew that he had had a girlfriend at the time. So I had done a lot of these archival things. I did a lot of the Marvel Universe the entries. I did a lot of I did the Spider-Man saga. So I knew all these little, minutia things about the characters and everything. I said, yeah, let's bring Calypso back, right? So
Uh-huh.
and Todd was like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah." Now, Todd just took the basics I had and he took well, I think mine was an 8-page story. And he took it in and expanded into 5 issues, put the lizard in there, made it really dynamic, right? But in gratitude, Todd gave me a cover to one of the Amazing Spider-Man books that he had worked on. And it's the one that has Hydro Man on it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I cherished this thing for years. I had this thing for years, but there came a time where I was like, wow, the original art market is really booming right now. I wonder what I could get for this.
Hmm. Hmm.
And while it broke my heart, I sold it for $60,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And but so now I'm sitting at the bar. I'm like, all right, if I had, what would I call this? I would call it "Have a Drink on Me," right? Like the old AC/DC song, it's like, "Have a drink on me," And so I registered haveadrinkonme.com. Now, of course, someone was sitting on that. It wasn't, but it was available. But someone was going to sell it for a premium. But I had the money. I had the money to buy it. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna buy this URL, haveadrinkonme.com. No, can't call it "Have a Drink on Me." That's just way too long for an app. Have a drink on me. Had 'em. Can I get had 'em again? Someone was sitting on that. I had to
Hmm.
buy it for a premium, but I had the money, so I bought. And boom. So it's just the new stage of my life. How I use the old stage of my life to fund the new stage of my life. So,
Very cool. Very cool. An enterprising idea.
yeah.
Yeah. So we can go to Haddam,
Okay. You
and
go to
check out your work there.
hadom.com, yep,
Mhm.
hadom.com, and you can see what is now. Right now, the app is not available on but we're hoping to have it within the next few months. Available on
Cool.
the App Store. Yeah.
Yeah. Any social media spaces or anything like that that you would want to share before we close?
I'm actually available on Facebook. You can reach out to me and friend me. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn these days, and I'm probably gonna do a lot more when Haddam gets out there. But I'm also going to be doing a lot of Facebook pushing, Instagram. I'm on Instagram, and I don't know. I might have to get back on X, I guess it is now.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and then I guess TikTok's a thing. I have not gotten into TikTok yet, so I definitely got to do that. But it'll probably be more uh, about Haddam and less about Glenn Herdling.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, Glenn, thank you for the time, the conversation,
Yeah.
the wonderful stories. Did we miss anything before we close that you want to make sure to mention?
I'm sure there's plenty of things. There's plenty of stories from the, the best comics in the 80s and 90s when I worked at Marvel is the best time of my life. And I'm still connected to a lot of, to this day, to a lot of really good people and a lot of friends. And one of the things I really feel sorry for, I tell this to my students all the time, is how, this hybrid model and this work from home model, you don't get to have that social connection that we used to have,
Mhm.
when we got to do, we have a meeting now and then, like even you and I, after this, the screen's going to go blank. We may never see each other again, right? Who knows? And
Right,
that's the
right.
same thing with, these poor, these young people that are now working and they're picking up, working from home. They don't get to meet each other. They don't get to go out and see each other and do things either at lunch or after work and everything like that. So they're really missing that whole social connection. And it's one of the reasons that I also am really proud of Haddam right now. And I'm hoping it will be some way to still keep people connected. So,
Great ideas. Great
yeah,
idea.
but to your point, comic books are also a way to keep people connected.
True, true. I love that thread in your work, and glad to have you back anytime to talk about different parts of the journey. If you're up for a follow-up conversation at some point.
Absolutely, Jason. Yeah, that would be fantastic. This was fun.
Yeah, yeah, same here. And thanks so much for coming on. We'll
All
talk
right.
again soon.
All right. Take it easy.
You too.
Bye bye.